Welcome to Career Uprising. I'm your host, Lorraine Rise, a career and executive coach dedicated to helping clients who are 40 plus to break free from feeling stuck and transform into the unstoppable force you're destined to become. Let's start the uprising. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Career Uprising. Take a minute to follow the show on Apple Podcasts so you never miss an episode. They come out just about every Monday. And share this episode with anyone you know who may be unemployed or struggling in their career in any way. I would also love it if you left a review, as I give this show freely every Monday, and I have for 7 years now. So welcome back, or welcome for the first time if you've never been here before. I'm Lorraine Rise, a career and executive coach. Today's episode is going to be fun. We're going to do something a little bit different, and we're going to do a listener Q&A. So this is episode 193, listener Q&A questions. I have not done this in a long time. In fact, I've only done 2 listener Q&As, and the last one was in 2021. We're been a while. We're a little bit overdue. Love the idea of this episode because I get to kind of answer from the mailbag, so to speak, and get really practical and share advice on real questions that job seekers like you out there are asking. So whether you are job hunting, thinking about a career change, or just curious what recruiters think and what is going on in the hiring process, this episode is for you. And so what I did is I kind of solicited questions from a couple different places. So first, I have some that came via phone or email from people who were prospects and kind of interested in joining the program, got some questions from them. Then at the end, after the commercial break, I'm also going to share results of a poll that I put out on LinkedIn, which got quite a bit of engagement. And so you're going to get to know what is the most burning question that people want to ask recruiters. And then I will share the answer as well. So there's a lot of information in this episode. Let's go ahead and dive in. So first, I'm going to answer a question that came to me from a gentleman named Charles. He sent me an email and he wants to know about resume length. How long should resumes be in 2025? That's a good question, Charles, because you hear a lot of different information out there. In fact, it's ironic because just this morning, I was answering an email to a current client who was asking about that and wanting a 3-page resume instead of a 2-page one that we had written for him. So there's definitely different practices and a lot of different information out there. So I'm going to tell you there's not a magic number necessarily, but 2 pages really is the standard for, especially for anyone who is mid or late career. 2 pages is usually plenty. If you are earlier career, 1 page would make sense. Maybe you've only had 1 or 2 jobs. I would expect to see a 1-page resume in that case. If you can get everything on 1 page as a mid-career professional, go for it. Maybe you've had 1 company you've been at for 20 years. Okay, I could see that. You might have 1 page. But most people we write resumes for, we go on to the 2nd page. The only time I really go to 3 pages is if you are in a certain field that warrants that, a medical doctor, academia, maybe a federal resume. There are times when it's expected to see much more information. And maybe you have other areas that you need to add, like publications and patents and things like that. Those are very common in those industries. And we definitely go on to the 3rd or even the 4th page sometimes. But if that's not the case, 2 pages is where we draw the line. Why this is so important too is because if you give too much information or have a big wall of text and it's just overwhelming, it's not inviting to the reader and it makes it hard for them to find the information that they're looking for. So definitely take a quality over quantity approach and make sure that you treat this as a strategic marketing document that is geared towards where you want to go and very timely in that sense, not just a biography of everything that you've ever done in your career, which is how we tend to treat resumes. So you have to think about it differently in order to be able to write it differently and keep it concise. And remember that it's okay to leave some details for the interview to share. You don't have to put all of it on there. You need to put the strongest and the most relevant items on there. And I would rather them latch on to a few really good things than have all those good things just buried under too much information. So definitely depends on your situation. There is some flexibility with things there, but we absolutely stick to 2 pages in most cases. While we're talking about resumes, I'll just give you guys a couple other little tips here. White space matters. All right. Make sure that the document is easily readable and scannable. So space out those lines a little bit, have a little bit of white space in there. I don't want to see a big wall of text with size 8 font jammed in there. It makes it really, really hard for me to find the information that I'm looking for as a recruiter or a hiring manager. Also, make sure to avoid fluff. Stick to facts, right? So instead of just saying responsible for sales, say increase sales by 25% in 6 months by doing whatever. That makes a big difference. So specificity is really, really important because it just adds a lot of credibility to it. And then the last piece that I will offer, one of the biggest questions that I get around resumes is, should I customize my resume for every single role? Surprisingly, I think the answer is no. I tell clients some customization might be necessary, but if you're rewriting your resume or spending 30 minutes on it before applying to one job, the jobs you are applying for might be too varied, too much. Your resume should fit pretty well the majority of jobs that you are applying for. Otherwise, maybe our target isn't quite right. But the other thing that tells me is that you very likely might just be overemphasizing the role of the resume in the job search as a whole. You can get a job without a resume. If you were doing strategic networking and are getting out there and having conversations and doing outreach to your targeted employers, that is gold. All right. That is going to make a big difference. So don't overemphasize the resume and only focus on that and just firing it off online. That is the worst way to go. I have very recently seen success with sending messages to the hiring manager or the person who posted the job on LinkedIn. That is absolutely something that has worked for me and for other people. Just remember that there's other pieces to this puzzle. And if we're only focusing on retooling our resume 100 times, we're missing those other pieces and not spending enough time doing those other things. So just be careful about that. I think some customization here and there matters, but you can get to a point where you're overdoing it and not using your time wisely, 100%. Okay, so resumes are one piece of the puzzle. We've established that. Here's another totally different question. So this came from someone named Elizabeth, and she is returning to the workforce after about 5 years off, raising kids, staying home. This is really, really common. And she wanted to know, how can I position myself to be competitive? How do I talk about this time off, right? Gaps, I have to say, gaps are common. They are. So first of all, welcome back to the workforce. And you're not alone. A lot of people have had challenges like this. So transitioning after a career break can feel very intimidating. It's very normal to feel that way. And you need to plan ahead and you need to be strategic. So here would be my advice to you and to anybody else in this time. Make sure your skills are up to date. This is a good time to take online courses, get certifications, do workshops, volunteer work, whatever you can do to make sure that your skills are up to date and as competitive as possible. You need to catch up on what you missed, essentially. And it's okay that you missed those things. You were busy doing something else. So that's fine, but make sure that you have a clear plan and talking points in interviews that you can share both on the resume and in the interview, how you've kept your skills up to date during that time. And if you don't feel like you have, you might need to do that before you launch the job search. You might need to get that certification class going, at least in progress, and start having conversations with your network and figuring out where the skill gap is and address it if you can before you launch the job search. That will make you even more competitive because you'll have a lot more to show for it. But that brings me to the next tip is to build your network, reconnecting with former friends, colleagues, attending industry events, reaching out to people for informational interviews. This is how you're going to get back into it. It's going to be through people. All right. Sometimes the best opportunities come from people that you already know, or it could come from somebody that you don't yet know. So making new connections and rekindling the old ones is going to be really important because especially if you haven't been working in your field most recently, the last few years, to address that disadvantage, you're going to want to have a referral if you can. Think also about maybe even going back to a former employer, somebody who already knows you and trusts you and has worked for you before. Might be very likely to rehire you at some point. Or at least go back to the people that you knew at those jobs to see how they might be able to help you. And the third is you need to address the gap confidently, both in interviews and on paper. So make sure that you address that career gap on your resume. Don't just ignore it and let your last job stop 5 years ago. Put a small line on there in the same place that you would a current job. So in your work history, where that gap would go chronologically, I want you to put, personal leave of absence or career sabbatical and say a little bit about what you were doing. You don't need to fluff it up. Just be simple and direct. If there was anything that you did that help to build your skills, such as maybe volunteer work or you were on a board or did anything like that, put those things in there. This is a great place to describe the coursework that you took if you did that. And if you were just a stay-at-home parent, simply put that as well. And you don't have to elaborate. We all know what that means and what that entails. You don't need to fluff it or dress it up. Just simply say that you took an intentional sabbatical from the workforce to stay at home and raise a family. That's fine. But put that there so that I don't have to guess and think that you just have been unemployed for 5 years. You were, but it was intentional and that makes a difference. So then be able to speak very confidently about that gap and address it in interviews. No shame, no embarrassment, own it. It was your choice. You did it on purpose, and that makes a big difference, okay? So you don't have to go into the details, of course, of what being stay-at-home parent is, we know, but what you do want to do is share that you made the conscious decision to prioritize your family at that time. You wanted to stay home for several years. You're refreshed. You're back at it. You're ready to go. Your priority right now is to land a full-time role. And here's how I've been also keeping my skills up to date and some other things that I have been doing, and redirect the conversation forward to what you're doing now, right? That volunteer work, those courses you're taking, whatever it might be. All right. So you can do it. You can go back into the workforce. People do it all the time. You may have to go back at a level lower than you were or take a pay cut. Unfortunately, sometimes that does happen. But the point is to just get out there and get back in it, and you will work your way back up quite quickly. All right. I think this is a great place to stop and take a quick commercial break so you can learn a little bit more about Career Uprising and what we do to transform the careers and the lives of mid and late career professionals. So when we come back, there's a lot more. We're going to share the poll results, and I have a lot more information and questions to answer for you. So we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. Hey there, listeners. Thanks for tuning in to Career Uprising. I have some exciting news for you. This show has been going steady since 2018, and I have amassed well over 100 episodes so far. So I decided to do something big and bold. I put the best of all of my teachings together in a book. That's right. I have a brand new book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all the major outlets. It's called What You Didn't Learn in School: Lessons on Growth, Change, and Living Your Best Life. This book contains 30 powerful lessons from my podcast and my work as a career coach to help you live your best life. Learn how to increase your confidence, get rid of imposter syndrome forever, finally get clarity on your career path, and so much more. This book covers everything from careers to finances to health to relationships and more. Head over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or your favorite book retailer and pre-order your copy of What You Didn't Learn in School. Then go to my website, careeruprising.com, to learn more about how Career Uprising can help you transform your career and your life. Let's get back to the show. All right, let's wrap things up talking about the results of this poll that I put out earlier on LinkedIn. So this was just a couple of days ago from the time of recording. And what I asked all of you was to tell me what you most want to ask a recruiter. If you had the opportunity to ask a recruiter one question, what would it be? And your options were ghosting. Why do candidates get ghosted? Why does the hiring process take so long? And what makes a resume stand out? So of those three, the clear winner that you wanted to know was what makes a resume stand out. The runner-up question was ghosting. So I'm going to answer that one too. But the vast majority of you wanted to know what makes a resume stand out. So as a recruiter and somebody who reads resumes literally for a living, there are a couple of things that I look for. So I think number one is that first impression that you make when I look at your resume in terms of the organization and the format, it helps, right? So if I look at it and it's like crazy or disorganized, there's too much information already, it's a little hard for me to dig through and find what I'm looking for. And what am I looking for? I would say your job title is really important. Job title alignment. And it doesn't mean that your job title has to be exactly the same as what I'm looking for. Of course, that helps, but it needs to be close and it needs to indicate that you're in the same job function and relatively close to the same level as what I'm hiring for. So I'm looking for, as close as possible, job title alignment. And I'm going to start with your current job. I am, and then work backwards. And I do look at the other ones. But I'm going to be looking at your current job to see what you're doing most recently. And if that looks really well aligned, I'm going to go ahead and read through some of the, or at least scan through some of the remaining bullet points that you have below that. If I don't really see alignment there, I'm probably not going to read the bullet points, not in too much depth, right? So job title alignment is really, really important. There's always certain keywords that I'm looking for. I do a keyword scan, whether that's for kind of industry keywords or skills, certain programming languages, whatever it might be, I'm going to scan through. So it is helpful when there is a skill profile up at the top that kind of tells me, here's like the technical programs I know and the soft skills I know, all of those things. That is really, really helpful. So if you can specifically list out, not so much the soft skills like communication, I'm not looking for that on your resume. I am looking for, full stack software engineering or technical project management or data governance or whatever it might be. I'm looking for the job function. Then sometimes I'm looking for specific systems that you might be using. All of this depends on the role that you're looking for. But I will search for the right keywords, and context helps. So having them not only at the top, but if I see them again in the bullet points where you actually used them, that is really helpful. I will say one other thing that's very helpful too is having a nice, clear headline up at the top of the resume, which is basically your job title and how you brand yourself. That is really helpful too, because that's the first thing I see when my eyes land on the first page of a resume. I am looking for that heading, kind of like a LinkedIn profile heading. It's up at the top of your resume. It's really the same thing. If that's aligned, I'm more likely to read through and then start looking at your keywords and your job title and your bullet points and things like that. So I can also definitely share that the first page is the most important. Absolutely. Not to say that I don't ever look at the second or third page, because I do like to look through for work history and dates of employment. That is something that I can tell you hiring managers want to see. And I've submitted a lot of resumes before where they get kicked back and they go, I don't like their work history. They're a job hopper. Unfortunately, that is something that hiring managers look for. Sometimes I have to go back and make the case that, yeah, it might be a little bit short, but here's all these other things about them, right? So job dates are important, job titles, a strong headline, well organized with a good flow, just easy to read, white space, not jam-packed with, too much information so I can't find what I'm looking for. It's the basics, guys. It's the basics. It really is. I don't care if you have a fancy format or graphs and charts or a photo. I don't need any of that stuff. It's about the substance. And it's about, is your resume professional and organized looking to where I can easily go in and find those keywords and bullet points and job titles that I'm looking for. Okay. I hope that helps a little bit. I will say the next thing, I'm going to go ahead and answer your other question about ghosting because it was a close runner up and I get a lot of questions about this as well. So why do candidates get ghosted? As you can imagine, there are a lot of reasons. So I cannot tell you why you personally have been ghosted by a recruiter. I can't. But what I can tell you is that there are many, many reasons why this might happen. It could be that maybe you had a great phone screen with them, but when they send it to the hiring manager, they weren't as thrilled. And sometimes some recruiters are good at getting back to you, some are not. Some company policy prohibits them from giving you specific feedback, so it's better to just not reply. Who knows? But sometimes it could be they lost interest for some reason and it just wasn't going to go anywhere. It's not your job. Sometimes the position gets put on hold and they are no longer hiring for that position. They may or may not go back to all of those candidates, depending on how many there were, and notify them. It's the volume. It's typically because of the volume. Sometimes it depends on the company culture. Sometimes it just depends on the recruiter. There's so many variables. Sometimes it's just human error. Sometimes they just forget, right? They thought they emailed you and they didn't, or something else took priority and they didn't get back to you again. I'm not defending it. I know how frustrating that is as a candidate. And as a recruiter, I do my absolute best to reply to people, particularly if they've interviewed. Where I personally draw the line is if we've spoken, I will give you follow up and it doesn't move forward. Even if I can't give you the reason why, I will at least let you know that we're not moving forward. Can I get back to everybody who just applies? No, I really can't. I mean, I have a job opening right now that has almost 400 people in it. So no, I'll be honest, though, not all of those people are going to get a decline necessarily. There's just higher priorities sometimes. But I do think that if you've taken the time to do a phone interview or especially any multiple rounds of interviews, they do owe you an explanation or at least a decline of some kind. You won't always get it. I know it sucks. Everybody is different, but that's how I do it. I at least try to get back to people when they've taken the time to have a phone call. I cannot get back to everybody who simply applies. It's just, and I think that's okay. Quite honestly, I think that is okay. I think that's a fair place to draw the line personally. But yes, job searching is hard, you guys. Don't take it personally at all. I know it's frustrating. Feel free to send a quick email to check in with them. If they don't give you a reply, don't keep going. Spend your time focusing on opportunities that will get back to you, that will reply. Protect your time and your energy as well. The recruiter's doing that, but you do that as well. So if that company is not responsive, unfortunately, you're just going to have to move on and focus on people who will. Okay. All right. I hope those listener questions helped you. Thank you so much to everyone who submitted a question and answered the poll. I really, really appreciate it. If you like this episode, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a new show. More episodes are still coming out, and you can hear any episode you want on the archive at careeruprising.com/podcast. They're all there. We are approaching 200 episodes, and I would love to have a discovery call with you. If you want to speak with me one-on-one and see if the program is right for you, you can go right to careeruprising.com. There are opportunities right there to schedule a call. I hope you have a beautiful day. Hey, it's Lorraine, and I want to say thanks for listening. If you found value in today's show, I would be honored to have your review on Apple Podcasts. It's the single best way to help this show be found by other listeners, and you'll earn some good karma. Thanks again for tuning in, and I can't wait to connect with you next time on Career Uprising.